The night my mother called me, her voice shaking with a fury she could barely contain. I was sitting on a rooftop bar in East Nashville watching the city go quiet. My phone had been lighting up for nearly an hour. I watched her name appear on the screen for the 5th time, took a slow sip of my sweet tea, and let it ring. My best friend Margot sat across from me, her elbows on the table, watching me with that calm, steady look she's had since we were 22 and pulling all-nighters before finals. "You're going to have to answer eventually," she said. "I know," I told her, "just not yet." When I finally picked up, my mother said, "Hazel, what have you done?" Her voice cracked halfway through the question. In the background, I could hear my father's low murmur, the sound of other voices, the rustle of what I imagined was still the anniversary party, technically still in progress, still being filmed for posterity. "Do you understand what you did tonight? In front of everyone?" I looked out at the city lights and said, simply, "Did you enjoy the gift, Mom?" The silence on the other end lasted long enough that I heard Margot exhale across the table. I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why that question meant what it meant, you'd have to know the Holloways. You'd have to know what it felt like to grow up as the wrong kind of daughter in a family that treated image like a second religion. My father, Frank Holloway, built his catering company from a single truck and a borrowed set of chafing dishes 25 years ago. He'll tell you that story at any dinner party, any church function, any Saturday afternoon when neighbors drift over. He's charming when he tells it. His face lights up. He uses words like grit and sacrifice, and we didn't have much, but we had standards. The story is real, more or less. What he leaves out is that my mother's parents co-signed the first commercial kitchen lease, that her uncle helped him land the contract with the city's parks department, and that the van was a gift from my grandmother. But the bootstrap version plays better, and in our world, the version that plays better is the version that gets told. Holloway Family Catering is a genuine success now. 40 employees, a fleet of vans, a reputation for wedding receptions and corporate retreats and church fundraisers across Middle Tennessee. My father wears it like a second skin. His name is on the van doors, on the embroidered polo shirts, on the sign above the prep kitchen on Murfreesboro Pike. Every year at the Christmas party, he gives a speech about legacy, about what we've built, about what he hopes to pass on. My mother, Donna, is the woman who makes all of it look effortless. She's the kind of person who arrives at potlucks with dishes that took 4 hours and somehow seems like she just threw it together. She chairs 3 committees at our church. She knows which families to seat next to each other at events to generate the most flattering conversation, and she would never use the word optics out loud. But that's exactly the lens she sees the world through. Everything is presentation. Everything is narrative. Everything is what it looks like from the outside. My brother Grant, 33, is the crown jewel of that narrative. He's an architect at a firm downtown, the kind of firm that gets profiled in Nashville Lifestyles magazine. He married a woman named Camille, who grew up in Brentwood, went to Vanderbilt, and has the kind of effortless Southern grace that makes my mother feel like she won something at a raffle. Grant plays golf on weekends. He's on the board of a nonprofit. He and Camille have a golden retriever and a house in 12 South, with original hardwood floors that Camille posts about on Instagram. My sister Sienna is 25 and works in PR for a healthcare company downtown, but her real career is being the kind of person other people want to look at. She has 40,000 followers on Instagram and a curated aesthetic that involves linen blazers, oat milk lattes, and captions about intentional living. My mother saves Sienna's posts to her phone. She shows them to people at church. She has printed, at least twice that I know of, a Sienna Instagram photo and framed it. And then there's me, Hazel, 28 years old. I'm an electrician. I own a small electrical contracting business called H. Holloway Electric, which I started 3 years ago after 5 years of apprenticeship and journeyman work. I serve homeowners, small businesses, renovation contractors, and the occasional commercial tenant who needs wiring work done before they can open their doors. I drive a white van with my name on the side. I wear work boots 6 days a week. I come home tired in the good way, the way where your hands have actually done something, where there are tasks you can point to and say, I fixed that, I made that work, that's mine. My family has never said directly that they're ashamed of me. They're too practiced at presentation for that. What they do instead is change the subject when my job comes up at family dinners. My father asks about my work in the same tone he might use for a hobby I haven't grown out of yet. My mother once told a neighbor that I worked in the trades with a smile that contained everything she didn't say out loud. Sienna posted a throwback Thursday photo of the two of us as kids and captioned it with something sweet about how we'd both grown up to pursue our very different paths. 300 likes from people who probably pictured a surgeon and a yoga instructor rather than a PR girl and someone who replaces breaker panels for a living. Grant is the only one who occasionally says something genuinely kind to my face. But even he tends to preface it with, look, I know it's not glamorous, but, as if the way I pay my mortgage requires a disclaimer before anyone can appreciate it. I had made peace with most of it, or at least built walls high enough that their disapproval didn't reach me the way it used to. I had Margot, who had been my person since college. I had customers who left me reviews calling me the most honest contractor I've ever worked with. I had a business that was growing, month over month, quietly and on its own terms. What I didn't have, going into my parents' 30th anniversary party, was any idea of what was actually waiting for me there. The party was my mother's production from start to finish. She'd been planning it since January. A venue in Franklin, a converted barn with string lights and a catering menu my father's own company handled, which requires a particular kind of marital confidence. 240 guests, a professional videographer named Todd, who my mother trusted to make everything look warm but elevated. Extended family flying in from Georgia, Texas, Alabama. One cousin from Oregon my mother refers to as our West Coast branch, like she's managing a franchise. 2 weeks before the party, she called me. Hazel, she said, in that measured, careful voice she uses when she needs something. This is a big night for our family. I need you to be there, and I need you to be presentable. I found some dresses on Nordstrom. I can send you the links. I have dresses, Mom. I know you do, sweetheart. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, presentation-wise. A pause. Todd is filming everything. I just want us all to look like we belong together. I told her I'd be there. I told her I'd wear something nice. And for 2 weeks I talked myself into believing that maybe this time would be different, that the party would just be a party, that my family would see me across the room and simply think, there's Hazel, and leave it at that. I drove to Franklin on a Saturday afternoon, 3 hours before the event, because my mother had asked if I could help direct vendors when they arrived. That part was true. She really did need the help. What I didn't know was that Grant and Sienna had arrived even earlier, and that, by the time I pulled into the parking lot, the three of them were already gathered in a small room off the main hall. I almost knocked. I had my hand raised, knuckles a half-inch from the door, when I heard my name. Just something short, during the toasts. My mother's voice, light and organized. Todd said, we can do it between the salad and the main. A little family tribute moment. My father laughed the relaxed kind. The slideshow was Sienna's idea? It was perfect. Sienna's voice. 2 slides for Grant, the Architecture Award, the Brentwood House, and then one for Hazel. Just one. I found this photo of her in her work vest. We can put up the caption, following her own path. A beat. I made it look affectionate. Todd said it'll play cute on camera. A pause. Then my father, more quietly, you think she'll take it well? My mother, she'll be fine. It's meant to be lighthearted. And honestly, she needs to hear it in a room full of people who love her. Maybe it'll be the push she needs. Grant's voice came next, lower and uncomfortable. Are we also doing the other thing? The business announcement. My father exhaled slowly. I want to address it tonight, yes. In front of family. It's cleaner that way. People witness it. No one can say it wasn't handled properly. His voice shifted into the formal register he uses when talking about contracts rather than people. The legacy plan goes to Grant. Hazel's made her choices clear, so we're formalizing that. She'll receive a small disbursement, a gesture, and that's settled. My mother added, softly, carefully, the way you say something you've rehearsed. And honestly, it protects her too. We don't want her feeling burdened by the business. She has her own thing. Her own thing, said the way you'd describe a child's art project. I don't remember deciding to leave. I just remember being in the parking lot. Then in my car. Then on the interstate. Then pulled into a rest stop outside Brentwood, sitting for a long time with my hands on the steering wheel and my phone face down on the passenger seat. I called Margot. She answered on the second ring. Hey, what's wrong? I told her all of it, the slides, the one photo of me in my work vest. Following her own path, the formal disinheritance, dressed up as consideration. The fact that Todd was going to film every second of it and my mother would probably use the footage as a family keepsake. Margot was quiet for a long moment, not the stunned, fragile kind of quiet, the calculating kind. I could picture her sitting at her kitchen table with her laptop open, processing. Okay, she said finally. First, I'm sorry, that's cruel even when they think it's loving. Second, her voice shifted into the register she uses at work. I need to ask you something about the Murfreesboro Pike property. I blinked. My mind was still back in that hallway. What about it? When did you last look at the tenant roster? I had bought the Murfreesboro Pike property 14 months ago through my LLC, H. Holloway Holdings. A property owner I'd done electrical work for was retiring to Florida and wanted to sell quietly to someone he trusted. The building had one main commercial unit and two smaller ones. I'd upgraded the electrical throughout, set fair below market rents for the existing tenants, and handed the day-to-day management to a property management company. I didn't check the tenant names every week. Margot, I said slowly, what are you not telling me? The main tenant in that building, she said, choosing each word carefully, signed a 2-year commercial lease last April. The entity on the lease is Holloway Family Catering, LLC. The rest stop around me went very quiet. Your dad moved his prep kitchen and warehouse operations there after his old lease ended, Margot continued. He got a below-market rate because the property management company was instructed to prioritize stable tenants. He has no idea who the beneficial owner of the building is. She paused. And they're 30 days late on last month's payment. No communication. The system flagged it automatically. I sat in the dark of that rest stop and felt something shift in my chest that I can't fully describe. It wasn't satisfaction. It wasn't anger, exactly. It was something more like the ground slowly leveling beneath me after years of standing at a tilt. My father was renting his prep kitchen, the backbone of his entire catering operation, the place where his team had prepped the 240 plates currently being served at his own anniversary party. From me, from my LLC, from the daughter he was planning to formally write off in front of the whole family tonight, with a single slide and a sympathetic caption. He didn't know, I hadn't known either until right now. Margot, I said, my voice steadier than I expected, what does the lease say about renewal terms and about late payments? She had already pulled it up. We worked through it for 2 hours. By the time we were done, Margot's attorney contact, a woman named Britta who specialized in commercial real estate, had reviewed the draft and confirmed it was clean. The notice was professional and specific. It stated that the current lease would not be renewed at its current terms. If Holloway Family Catering wished to remain at Murfreesboro Pike, a new lease would need to be negotiated at market rate, roughly 30% higher than what they were paying. The overdue payment was due within 15 days or late fees would accrue. Attached to the notice, the full beneficial ownership disclosure, 1 page, my name, my LLC, my signature on the original purchase agreement. Britta arranged for a process server to deliver the envelope to the venue in Franklin during the dinner service. I wasn't there when it arrived. I was at a friend of Margot's place on Percy Priest Lake. A small group of people who had no idea my family existed. We ate take-out barbecue and played cards, and when it got cold, we moved inside and put on a movie nobody was really watching. A guy named Dale, who I knew from a job site, told a long story about a bad road trip to Memphis. I laughed until my sides hurt. My phone stayed face down on the coffee table. Margot told me later, from what she heard secondhand through Britta, what had happened at the venue. The envelope arrived right in the window between the salad course and the main. The same window my mother had carved out for toasts. My father accepted it, thinking it was a congratulatory card from a business associate. He opened it at the table. His expression changed before he said a single word. My mother leaned over. She read the first page, then the second. When she saw my name on the ownership disclosure, she pushed back her chair. Grant, who had already risen to give a toast, quietly sat back down. Todd, the videographer, kept filming for approximately 40 seconds before someone asked him to stop. My mother called at 9:17 p.m. I let it ring twice, then answered. Hazel. Her voice was stripped of all its careful management, raw and unfamiliar, like hearing a song played without all its production. What is this? What did you send? A lease renewal notice, I said. Standard business communication. This is our property. Your father runs his business out of that building. You cannot just. It's not your property, Mom, I said quietly. It's mine. It has been for over a year. She made a sound I'd never heard from her before. How? How do you own a commercial building? You fix wiring. I let that sit for a second. I fix wiring. I also save money. I also pay attention. I built an LLC 3 years ago and used it to buy a distressed commercial property from a retiring owner who trusted me because I'd done honest work for him. I rented the units to good tenants at fair rates, including, apparently, Dad. I paused. I didn't know it was him until last night. You're lying. I'm not. Silence. In the background, I heard my father's voice, low and urgent, then Sienna asking something, a door closing. You embarrassed us, my mother said, in front of our guests. On our anniversary, Todd was there to film the moment you put one slide of me in my work vest and called it a family tribute, I said. He was there to film you announcing in front of 240 people that I'm being removed from any future inheritance. He was there to make you look like a loving, generous family. I kept my voice level. I just sent some paperwork. That is completely different. Is it? She shifted then. Her voice softened into something that might, in a different context, have sounded maternal. Hazel, sweetheart. We were not trying to hurt you. The toast was meant to be light-hearted, a family moment. You know how we are. I know exactly how you are, I said. That's why I wasn't at the party. So this is revenge. You're going to threaten your father's business over a slideshow? I stood up and walked to the edge of the porch, looking out over the dark water. Somewhere on the lake, a boat's running light blinked in the distance. It's not revenge, I said. It's a lease renewal notice. The terms were always going to be renegotiated when the contract came up. The only thing that changed tonight is that you know who your landlord is. Hazel. I've been renting to you below market for over a year. You've been late on payments without a word to anyone. Meanwhile, you were planning to read me out of the family legacy on camera and call it love. I took a breath. I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing it because I'm done being the person who gives quietly while being told publicly that she isn't enough. She didn't answer right away. I could hear the party sounds behind her, the subdued clink of glasses, the murmur of 240 people trying to figure out what had just happened. "What do you want?" she finally asked. "Right now? Nothing. Have your attorney contact Britta's firm with any questions about the lease. If Dad wants to stay at that location, I'd like him to stay. The rent adjustment is fair market. The late payment needs to be resolved." I set down my glass. "And at some point, when you're ready, I'd like a conversation where I'm not the cautionary tale in someone else's story." "But that one can wait." She hung up. The weeks after were uneven in the way things usually are when something that was always true's suddenly becomes impossible to ignore. My father emailed 6 days later, formal and stiff, no mention of the party. He asked whether the LLC would consider a phased rent increase rather than an immediate jump. I forwarded it to Britta, who replied on my behalf with reasonable terms. We settled on a transition schedule. He signed the new lease without another word directly to me. Grant called on a Tuesday. He got straight to it, which I respected. "I didn't know they were going to do the disinheritance thing in front of everyone," he said. "I thought it was just a toast. I should have pushed back harder. I'm sorry." It wasn't enough to undo years of going along, but it was honest, and I believed him. Sienna posted a quote 2 weeks later. Something about how family was complicated and not everything worth feeling was worth posting. I don't know exactly what to make of that. I choose to think of it as the beginning of something. Some cousins texted privately. An aunt I barely know left me a voicemail. "You handled that with a lot more grace than I would have. I hope you know some of us see you." I saved it. My business had its best quarter since I opened. A property manager reached out about electrical inspections across 7 buildings he managed. I hired a second as electrician. On the whiteboard in my shop, I wrote out where I wanted to be in 2 years. I didn't factor my family's opinion into any of it. Nearly a year later, I'm sitting in my van in the parking lot of a job site in Germantown, finishing a sandwich and reading through an email from my father. It's shorter than I expected. "The new location is working well for the team. I ran into one of your customers at a chamber event last month. He spoke highly of your work. Things are stable on our end. I hope they are on yours." That's it. No apology. No mention of the anniversary party, the legal documents, the year of near silence. Just, "I heard good things about you. I hope you're okay." It's not a reconciliation. I'm not going to pretend it is. But it's the first thing he's said to me that treated my work as something real. Something that could generate a reputation worth mentioning at a Chamber of Commerce event, something that existed in the same world as his. I wrote back, "Thanks, Dad, things are good. I hope they stay good for you too." Then I pulled on my work gloves and went back inside. I've thought a lot about what it means to build something quietly. To do honest work without announcing it, to let it accumulate without asking anyone to applaud. For a long time, I thought that was just my personality. Now I think it was partly survival. When the people who are supposed to celebrate you make it clear they won't, you stop asking. You build anyway. You protect what you're building from their opinion of it. The thing I didn't see coming was that the thing I built quietly turned out to be the thing they couldn't ignore. Not because I planned it that way, I genuinely hadn't. I bought that building because the numbers made sense and because a good man trusted me with something he'd spent decades taking care of. That's all it was. The rest of it, the timing, the way it arrived in the middle of their party, the way my name looked on that ownership page, none of that was engineered. It just happened to be true. Sometimes the thing they laughed at is the thing that ends up holding the floor. I'm not waiting for my family to come around. I'm not building toward a scene where they finally understand. Maybe they will one day. Maybe my father's email is the first line of something longer. Maybe it's not. Either way, my life stopped pausing for that conversation a long time ago. If you've ever been the one in your family who chose the wrong path, the one that didn't photograph well, didn't carry the right title, didn't fit the story they were trying to tell, I want you to hear this. The work is real, even when they refuse to look at it. The value is there even when no one in that house acknowledges it. You were never the punchline in their story. You were always writing your own. Where are you listening from right now? What time is it where you are? Tell me, because if you've ever been made to feel small in a room full of people who were supposed to love you, I want you to know you are not alone, and you don't have to keep sitting at that table.